Now that we have looked at those examples of how the eye processes colors, perceives and processes color, now let's look at how we reproduce color with an optical system, such as a lens and a camera. So each element in the chain affects color reproduction. You have the lens, where the color might be absorbed differently for different glasses or different coatings. Also, the optical correction for each color plays a role, whether you have chromatic aberration or not. The light falls onto the sensor, which might have different color reproduction than the human eye, and also some level of noise in low light, which will affect the color reproduction. And those signals will be processed by algorithms such as white balance, color correction, and contrast enhancement, which will also change the color that are reproduced by the optical system. And in the end, we have to display those colors either on paper or on a screen, and the important parameters here are the color depth or the contrast of the medium you are using to display the image. How are we actually trying to mimic exactly the eye as an optical system? The answer is no, for several reasons, but let me give me an example. Here you see a rainbow, as we have seen at the beginning. And in the rainbow, the white light is divided into different colors. The eye acts in a similar way. It tries to focus the color, it tries to focus the light on the retina, but since the light is composed of different colors, it will focus different colors at different positions. That's called longitudinal chromatic aberration. And that effect should be visible in the image, but it will be compensated by the brain, which will eliminate it. Now, when we are designing a lens, we don't want that effect to appear in the first place, so we have to correct for it. And we have also many lenses to correct for it. We don't have only one single lens as the eye does. The second aspect is the retina. The retina, as a sensor, here you see a cut of it, is a curved sensor with a very inhomogeneous distribution of receptors across it. Here you can clearly see the red, green, and blue receptors. And these receptors are placed in such a way that the brain is able to process them optimally. But of course, when we are designing a sensor, it's a really hard task to reproduce such a sensor like the retina. So how do we do that? In a classical optical system, we have the lens, which corrects as well as possible the chromatic aberrations, such that we don't have to take care of them in the post-processing. And we have a sensor, and the sensor, as opposed to the retina, will mostly be a flat sensor with regularly distributed pixels on top of it. Each pixel will react to light, and on top of each pixel you will have a filter of a different color, in most cases red, green, and blue, which will capture the color information of the scene. So how does such a red, green, blue sensor compare to a human eye? If we look at the sensitivities that we have already seen at the beginning of the human eye, then you see three curves, and the blue, the green, and the red. And the green and the red curve are very close together. Now, for a typical sensor, you will have a slightly different picture. Here, the green channel will be the dominant one, and you will have a larger separation between the blue, the green, and the red channels that you have in the eye. These differences will make the sensor reproduce colors natively differently than the eye does, and so will imply that we will have to correct for this different color reproduction with several algorithms. And the three main steps that I want to illustrate here are debayering, white balance, and color correction. So what happens when the light falls onto the sensor? The sensor is just measuring an intensity. So if you look at a raw image sensor, it will just be a grayscale image. It will actually just be voltage for each pixel. Each pixel will receive a certain amount of photons and will generate a certain tension across its electrodes. You can display that as a grayscale image, but you also know that in front of each pixel there's a filter of a different color, red, green, and blue. By using that information, you are able to give the first colors to the image. This is a process called debayering. The image which comes after debayering has, in most cases, a strong green tint. Why is that so? It's because the green channel, as we saw before, is the dominant one. That's the one which will receive the most light in almost all conditions. So the white and gray patches will have a green tint, and the rest of the image also as well. In order to correct for the imbalance between red, green and blue, we apply a second algorithm, which is called white balance. So here we just try to make gray patches look gray and white patches look white. After we have done that, we have at least neutral colors that are neutral, but looking into more detail at the colors, we see that some colors are not perfectly reproduced. Why is that? It's because the eye, as we've seen, has a different sensitivity to color than the sensor. And in order to correct for these different sensitivities, then we will apply a third algorithm, which is called color correction, which will try to shift the colors that are seen by the sensor to the ones seen by the eye. After applying that color correction algorithm, the colors are almost perfectly corrected. I say almost because there's always a trade-off to do between the colors you correct perfectly and the ones you correct less perfectly, since the eye and the camera system don't have the same sensitivities. Now, you have, let's say, a perfectly corrected image, almost perfectly corrected, and you have to display or print it now. So your screen or your paper or your printer needs to be able to display those colors. Let's take a look at what a screen can do. In that diagram, you see the oval area represents the colors as they can be seen by the eye, all colors that an eye can see. And the triangles represent the colors that a display can reproduce. And you see that there is no display that can reproduce all colors that the eye can see, but some of them are quite close and can reproduce quite a lot of colors. And actually nowadays, newer generations of display technology will help or will improve the color reproduction that's displayed on the screen.